It's about time we ban these kaijus. What is good, duelists? A lot of people have been saying that kaijus are a big problem in Duel Links. A lot of decks are playing kaijus, a lot of decks are getting kaiju, and a lot of people in a lot of comment sections are saying that these cards should be banned or limited in some way to make them less common. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I think it's a bit of a skill issue, but in this video, I'm not only going to explain why I think it's a skill issue, but I'm also going to show you exactly how to beat kaijus. And you might already be writing your angry comments talking about how I'm just a toxic meta player who is just telling you to get good, and I'm stupid because you can't beat something that you can't respond to. Maybe you can't beat something that you can't respond to, but me, I can. So maybe you should listen to me giving you the advice so that you can actually start winning. So what is a kaiju exactly? Basically, it is a monster that you can summon by tributing your opponent's monsters, and because of the fact that it's a tribute, it means the opponent is not able to respond to it. There's a few categories for this. There's the 1 tribute kaijus, 2 tribute kaijus, and 3 tribute kaijus. And I am going to be talking about how to beat all of them today. But basically, there's the kaijus that are literally kaijus, like the ones that have kaiju in their name. There's a bunch of different ones with different attributes, different monster types, and this is good because a lot of skills don't specifically tell you that you're allowed to play any monster, but that you're locked behind certain restrictions, and sometimes that might be a monster type like insect. You're not allowed to summon anything except insects, but there's insect kaijus, so you can play insect kaijus. Maybe you're not allowed to use anything except fiends, but that's okay. You can use Radiant or even Santa Claus. Maybe you're locked behind an attribute, so you could use one of the different attributes because they all have different attributes. Maybe you're locked behind a certain attack values, like Mikanko is not allowed to use anything with 3,000 or less attack, so you could use the high attack kaijus. Like, there's a lot of restrictions going on, you know, within the decks themselves that restrict the kaijus that you're allowed to play. And when you're playing against kaijus, you can use that to your advantage if you know what deck the opponent's playing because of the skill that they reveal or the character they're playing. You can kind of guess what kaijus they're allowed to play or what kaijus they would optimally play. For example, Lava Golem will prevent you from normal summoning the same turn. Same deal with Winged Dragon Raw Sphere mode. So if you know that your opponent's playing a deck that needs its normal summon, you can be sure that the opponent's not going to be playing Lava Golem or Sphere mode. But if the opponent's deck doesn't need its normal summon, then you might want to play around Sphere mode or Lava Golem, and we'll get into that. But first, I just want to talk about the generic, you know, just something that tributes one of your monsters to summon itself. These here are all of the kaijus that can tribute one monster to summon themselves. They summon themselves to the opponent's side of the field. They don't have any beneficial effects while on the field, so you can just remove them or beat over them in battle, it's fine. But as the person getting kaiju, obviously the opponent is going to be getting rid of your threat from the side of the field to make things easier for them. It might not necessarily be the kaiju killing you, but the kaiju just making it easier for them to kill you. And this video isn't to say that that isn't going to happen. I'm just saying that you can plan for it. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to give an example using a free-to-play deck of a deck that perfectly exemplifies the first way that you can play through kaijus. And this first way is by having way too much for the opponent to kaiju. Of course, the opponent can only kaiju one of our monsters, but as you can see here, I have 4 monsters. They can only kaiju one of these. If they kaiju my Dragite, that gets rid of one of my back row negates, but I still have this back row negate, I still have this back row negate, I still have all 3 of my back row, and 2 of these back row here were searched for, but they could tribute my primal. But then if they tribute my primal, I do lose access to my transmigration negate, but I can still use my dragon negate, I can still use my galaxy negate, I can still use my dragster, I can still use my gabu. If they tribute this, I still have all the other negates. And then if they wanted to tribute this, then they can't because my main monster zones are clogged, and that's another way that you can deal with that, but we'll talk more about that later. The point is that if you have a lot of threats, them kaijuing away one of them does not leave you defenseless. You still have other methods to defend yourself with. And if you're playing a deck that only really has one threat and it loses to a kaiju, you need to play a better deck, because realistically right now there's no deck in the world that only has one threat on the field. But you might say, well, what if the opponent has Lava Golem or Sphere mode? Well, let's say the opponent has Lava Golem, they get rid of 2 of our threats, we still have 2 remaining threats. We're still okay. Plus, our Gabu trap here doesn't rely on us controlling any particular monsters, so we still have that interruption. That is another thing, that if your deck has layered interruption, that being if your interruptions don't necessarily care if you have monsters on the field or any particular monsters on the field, then you are going to be more safe to a Kaiju. And when I say layered, this could be back row, this could be hand traps, this could be effects that activate in the grave as quick effects, just ways to keep yourself in the game if you get your monsters removed. In this game, you have to be aware that sometimes your monsters are going to be removed. It's just the fact of life. Kaijus are just the best way of going about it because the opponent's not going to be able to negate it. The point isn't to be able to try to negate monster removal. The point is to be able to have a plan if your monsters get removed. This plan is a bit, over the top because, we just have too many things to remove for the removal to really make a difference, but there are other ways to go about it. Okay, so here I wanted to show Chimera, which in my opinion is probably the best example of what a layered game plan looks like. Layered meaning, hey, if the opponent has board breakers like a Kaiju, it's perfectly fine because we have way more going on for us than just what's on the field, on our monster field. Here we do have the Beatrice, which can be an interruption, sending something to the grave, maybe a Farfa or something like that if you play it. But if that gets removed, then we can still have the Fiendish Golem. Fiendish Golem doesn't particularly care about what monsters we have on the field. And on the opponent's turn, we do have our revival effects from both of our fusions. So if the opponent does have some kind of removal, we have a way to stay in the game. On the opponent's turn, just the monsters we have on the field right now aren't going to actually prevent the opponent from playing the game, so there's not really a need to Kaiju anything we have here. But at some point, we can use our Chimera to revive this Chimera as well. But then if they Kaiju this, then this one can just banish itself to revive that Chimera. So them Kaijuing us isn't going to really hurt us so much. On top of the fact that if they use a card effect to get rid of one of our illusions, we can use Mirage Mirror Force to get another revive going. And the whole point of this game plan is just the fact that during the opponent's turn, the opponent's removal is something we don't really care about because we can always keep something on the field pretty much. That's probably the most difficult thing about this deck, is that their removal doesn't really phase us. And there's a lot of decks in the game that the removal doesn't really phase us because there's just other things that we can do to stay in the game. So if your deck has quick effect ways of keeping board presence on the field, that's another way to just not care about Kaijus, as well as the fact that, having searchable back row incorporated into your game plan means that monster-based removal isn't going to hurt you so much. A decent amount of you have probably been playing Tachyon. It's a very popular deck, and if you're playing it, you might be feeling like, holy shit, Kaijus are everywhere. How the hell am I supposed to beat Kaijus? Because in this board state, if they Kaiju your Tachyon Dragon, both of your traps are turned off, and all you have is one back renegade. One back renegade is not enough to win a game. The problem is that there's a bunch of Kaijus around and you haven't figured out how to deal with them yet. That's fine. I'm going to show you exactly what you can do to deal with it. I'm just going to assume that you've already watched the Tachyon guide. Here's what I do if I think that the opponent might be playing a deck that plays Kaijus. Instead of going into Hope Harbinger, I just make a second Galaxy Eyes. At this point, you might think, well, yes, if the opponent has a Kaiju, I still have another Tachyon on the field, so my traps are still going to be able to activate. But what if the opponent has Lava Golem? Then I'm going to have no Tachyons on the field. But we still have a plan for that. First thing we want to do is set both of our traps because, let's be real, people aren't really playing back row removal right now anyway. So setting our traps isn't going to be the biggest deal. We're still going to be able to use them going first, and then we're going to end our turn, and on the opponent's turn, we're going to use Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Primal in our hand to summon it to our side of the field, search another trap, and what this does is, since we have 3 Tachyons on the field, one Kaiju isn't going to turn us off, one Lava Golem isn't going to turn us off, because we have 3 Tachyons on the field, they can only remove 2 with Lava Golem, so all of our traps are going to be online, and if they remove Tachyon Spiral Galaxy, we still have another one in hand we can use. Of course, the one weakness to this is if the opponent has Sphere Mode, that is going to turn us off. Thankfully, you can pretty much be certain most decks don't have Sphere Mode in them. If the opponent is playing Odeon, they definitely have Sphere Mode in their deck, so if the opponent's playing Odeon, then only summon Primal to the opponent's side of the field. That way you can stay under 3 monsters on the field, because the way you beat Sphere Mode is by having less than 3 monsters. If the opponent is playing Winged Dragon of Ra, same deal, they can also search for the Sphere Mode. And if the opponent is playing Nouvelles, you just have to hope, because they play all 3 kinds of Kaijus, I'm sorry to say. And to be real with you guys, Hope Harbinger is kind of overrated in this deck anyway. I might just cut it for a third copy of Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Dragon, to be honest with you guys. I am recording this before the ban list, so if this video drops after the ban list and I'm not allowed to even play this anymore, then hey man, completely fine. As long as I can play 3 copies of this, I'm probably good. Here's an example of a way to very sneakily deal with Kaijus. I have Masquerade in my extra monster zone here. Why is that? If the opponent has a Kaiju, they're not allowed to Kaiju my Masquerade because a Kaiju has to be in the main monster zone, but all of my main monster zones are currently being clogged. So they can't get rid of my Masquerade with a Kaiju, they have to use other effects to get rid of it. Their Kaiju is going to be used probably on my Mirror Jade, right? But I can always use Branded in red, bringing back my ad libitum, fusion summoning, and my ad libitum will inherently bring back the Mirror Jade no matter what I choose to summon. In this way, I cannot really care about what the opponent is doing with their Kaiju because I still have a whole bunch of stuff to do. And the fact that they can't Kaiju my Masquerade means that they might just straight up lose to the damage that the Masquerade does. Again, this is just an example. I'm not saying that you got to be playing branded to do this kind of thing. And if this video comes out after the ban list and Masquerade gets hit in some way that prevents Branded from playing it, then of course this isn't going to be something Branded can do, but they probably will do it still with whatever fusion they choose to put in the extra monster zone so that the opponent can't Kaiju you. And this is just an example. You can do this in other decks. Whatever monster you have that you don't want the opponent to use a Kaiju on, you can put it in the extra monster zone and clog up your main monster zone. And that's the way to get around Kaiju. This doesn't necessarily account for Lava Golem, but Kaijus are a lot easier to access than Lava Golem because you can play a whole lot more Kaijus in your deck than you can play Lava Golem. A lot more decks can play Kaijus because they don't turn off your normal summon. So far, I've pretty much been telling you that the way to get through Kaijus is to build a game plan that still protects you even if you do get Kaiju. And if your game plan does die to a Kaiju and you can't find any way to update it or upgrade it or find some way to still have threats on the field, then you're playing a really old deck and you need to change it. You need to get something more modern. You can't just go around, you know, praying that your deck from 6 years ago is still going to be good today. That's just not how it works in any game, to be real with you. If a Kaiju is what you're complaining about, the thing that only tributes one monster is what you're complaining about, then you need to summon more than one monster or more than one monster that has a threatening effect on it. Though I can be a little bit more understanding when it comes to Lava Golem and Sphere Mode, these are a lot more detrimental. Sphere Mode and Lava Golem will both take your normal summon away one way or another because Sphere Mode counts as a normal summon. Lava Golem is a special summon but prevents you from normal summoning that turn. And like I said with Tachyon, if you want to play around Sphere Mode, first of all, you just know the decks that play Sphere Mode, those mainly being Winged Dragon of Ra itself, Odeon decks. In preparation for those, you make sure that you don't have 3 monsters on the field when you end your turn. Lava Golem is going to be a lot more popular than Sphere Mode because the opponent more reliably is going to have 2 monsters on the field at all time. The way you play around Lava Golem is instead of having less monsters on the field, you have more monsters on the field. And of course, the same thing applies to Lava Golem and Sphere Mode that applies to all the other Kaijus. If you just have a layered game plan with effects that can keep you alive regardless of your monsters being on the field, like maybe you have quick effects to revive things, maybe you have back row to interrupt the opponents despite your monsters, then that's going to be a way to keep yourself alive. And as long as you have other ways to keep yourself on the field, then that's all you need. There's a few other things to keep in mind as well. Mother Spider is a Kaiju that only insect decks will play, but they can search for it, and it special summons itself to your side of the field by tributing 2 opponent's defense mode monsters. So if you are playing against an archive skill deck, it's a chance that it might be an insect deck, and if that's the case, then if you put any monsters in defense mode, only leave 1 monster in defense mode so that they can't punish you by using Mother Spider on you. If your deck has some way of preventing the opponent's summons, like Aurora Paragon, or even Evil Swarm Ophion, then you can just straight up prevent the opponent from Kaijuing you in the first place. Something like Mask of Restrict that says neither player can tribute cards is also going to prevent the opponent from tributing your card, so they're not going to be able to Kaiju you. So perhaps if you really lose to a Kaiju, you can play 1 copy of this. You can only play 1 copy of this, but maybe your deck has an easy way to get access to it. I don't know. There's this monster here, Fog King. You can tribute a monster or no monsters to normal summon it, and it gains attack equal to monsters that it tributed. And it says neither player can tribute cards at all. If you have a way to consistently set this up on your field, it means that the rest of your field is going to be unkaijuable. In general, trying to prevent the opponent from kaijuing you is going to still make you lose to the other things that don't kaiju you, like other staples, because kaijus aren't the only way the opponent has to deal with your board. The other ways the opponent might have to deal with your board might be eclipse, droplets, other kinds of ways to break your board in general. So having the kind of game plan that I go over in this video, where you have a lot of threats on the field, or you have a layered game plan where you don't necessarily lose to board breakers because you have hand traps or back row or grave effects or quick effect revival effects to keep you in the game if you do get your shit dealt with, is not only going to be good against kaijus, it's also going to be good against the opponent's other ways of interrupting you. They don't need something like Fog King, because it's better to be kaiju'd and have a plan for if you get kaiju'd than to just try to not get kaiju'd in the first place. Kaijus are kind of needed in the game, bro. You look at this field and you're like, oh my goodness, bro, Tachyon doesn't even care about kaijus, man. So what's even the point? The point is that by playing through kaijus here, by preventing the opponent's kaijus from utterly screwing us, you do kind of prevent us from going into Titanic Galaxy, so we lose a back row negate as a result of trying to get around kaijus. Technically make us weaker as a result. You also force us to set our back row, so if you do have effects in your deck that remove back row, they are going to be more of a threat to force us to use our back row here. The threat of kaijus will make decks that might lose to kaijus sacrifice some things just so that they can be okay against kaijus. Meaning that the kaijus existing will make the decks that lose to them fair. On top of the fact that if a deck like this that was able to set up all of these interruptions didn't have to deal with the opponent having kaijus, lava golems, etc., stuff like that, a deck like this going first would be a auto win a lot of the time. Having kaijus in the game doesn't necessarily beat these decks. Like I said before, we still have a defense. However, it will weaken these decks to a point where you are more able to play through these interruptions. Most decks can't play through all these interruptions. They can play through some of these interruptions though, so having the kaiju there to just get rid of one or two of the interruptions is going to make it a lot more easy for you. So not only are kaijus good for helping you to go second, making the game a bit more fair for the going second player, but going first, they're not utterly game breaking as long as you set up enough protection to make sure that you're not completely blown out by a kaiju. I hope that what I'm saying in this video helps you to not only benefit from kaijus, but also play around them in a way that helps you to win games still. But I still imagine that to a lot of you, what I'm saying is essentially just going to sound like get good scrub. And in a way, yes, I am a little bit saying get good scrub, because to be honest with you guys, a lot of you will see a problem in this game that you have trouble facing against, and instead of trying to think of how you can play around it or how you can try to defeat it or how you can be better prepared for it, you just default to saying that this just shouldn't exist. That's just a really defeatist mindset, and I don't think it's very good as a duelist to have a mindset like that. If you're the kind of person that as soon as a problem arises, you just instantly think, I just want the problem to disappear, instead of being the kind of person who, when a problem arises, you try to find a way to solve the problem, then you're not going to find any success in a game like this. This is a strategy game. If you want to win, you have to think strategically. You can't let YouTubers think for you. You got to think for yourself. You got to win for yourself. If there's a problem, you can solve it most of the time. And there's a problem that can't be solved, that's another discussion that we can have, because I can't lie, now and then there will be a problem that does definitely need to be solved, but you can't conflate the two things. Because of the fact that there are problems exist that definitely need to get solved by Konami's intervention, a lot of you will just shift responsibility for problem solving to Konami, when you yourself are capable of problem solving yourself. So in this video, hopefully I gave you some good insight for how you can solve these problems, but also I just want this video to kind of be an example as to why you shouldn't shift responsibility for problem solving to everyone else. You yourself can also solve problems, as I am solving problems for you right now. Hopefully you don't need me next time. And if after this video you still think kaijus need to be banned, then, you know, try to give a good argument in the comment section as to why. Even though I think that most of your arguments can be responded to by just saying get good, because you're probably not good at the game if you think kaijus are broken. Sorry to say it, it's just the reality, because good players are not losing to just a kaiju. But anyway guys, if you like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell to get notified next time we drop a video. Have yourselves a good one. I've been Undead from Team 6K, signing out.
Hey, why they gotta hate on me? I done got me 250,000 views and they still saying they low key. They ain't wanna come work with the kid, but I'm flexing with Zay on beats. How they ask for a spot at the gym, but they leave all the weight on me. I don't ask them to wait on me. They would ask where they gon' be with a song if they wanted the Weatherman. I ain't asking to pay no fees. She was homeless and needed a spot. I ain't ask her to pay no lease. I ain't ask her to say no please. I ain't ask her to make no cheese. Scream fake, but it ain't on me. Got clean, so it ain't no streets. Why green if it ain't no keeps? Brought cream, so it ain't no beef. My team say it ain't no chief. My demon, they hang on me. They seemingly ain't no peace. I seen him, he ain't no beast. For real.